Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
The one thing I'm grateful for, I guess, the chance to live this life in its full expression, because, being able to live my life in its full expression has to do with being a mother, has to do with being an entrepreneur, and has to do with being self-aware.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator. I'm Moshe Popack, and today we're having a fascinating conversation with a fascinating woman about food, mindfulness, and sexuality. Cristie Besu went from an ER nurse to an international business owner. Her company, Eat Me Guilt-Free, provides delicious, health-conscious alternatives to sweets. She'll tell us how she grew her company from her kitchen to over 8,000 independent retailers. Plus, she'll explain why she's on a crusade to empower as many women as possible to embrace their sexuality. Now, here's my conversation with Cristie. Enjoy. Hi, Cristie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
I want to start with your mantra. Freedom should not have limitations. Why is that so important to you?
Yeah. So part of, I guess, how that evolved for me and for Eat Me Guilt-Free was as a result of not liking this feeling of being constrained and how important freedom is for me. I mean, my background is I'm Cuban American second generation. So that was one piece of the puzzle, kind of like my DNA per se is to want to live and speak freely and express myself and live in a place where that's, able to be done. So that is definitely very important to me across the board. And it kind of resonates for the brand. That's kind of how the brand has taken on that DNA as well. And as far as Eat Me Guilt-Free goes, we feel that for a long time, people didn't really have a choice, right? They had to decide whether they were going to eat crappy food. This food conglomerates basically told us, this is what's delicious. It's what I'm making. And it's really inexpensive and has a bunch of stuff in it that might kill you. And the stuff that's healthy is, most of the time is just doesn't get defined or incorporated as delicious. So that kind of takes away your choice and makes you feel like you're boxed in. And that is, a problem for me and for the brand. It kind of, you can see it in our marketing and how we speak. It's a really big piece of who we are, not just how we make our products.
I think the idea of freedom is a core DNA of mine. So I align with that. I admire that you do that and put the action here in this world into your brand. So take me back to 2013 and the origin of your company, Eat Me Guilt-Free.
The product came about because I had a lot of clients, nutrition clients, and I kept asking me for something sweet. There was something missing. At the time, there were only protein shakes and maybe even protein bars, right? But there really weren't any products that were functional. Like now we're really starting to see a lot of things with better nutrition facts that are similar to what, we like to eat comfort food wise. So that was a huge, there was a huge gap at the time. So that's why I kind of went into my kitchen. I started, baking and coming up with things. And that's how the brownie was born. And I guess the name, a lot of people fixate on that. And, I can't remember the exact moment that I came up with the name, but I do remember that it was Eat Me Brownies. It wasn't Eat Me Guilt-Free because originally it was just a brownie. And it was kind of meant to be, I guess, a dual meaning, kind of eat me like I'm the brownie. I'm asking you like, hey, I'm over here, eat me, I'm edible. And then we also kind of have that, it has that undertone of sexuality, which kind of spills over from, something that I thought would catch my attention. I'd see it on the shelf. That's how Eat Me Guilt-Free was born. And on direct, it became a really popular direct-to-consumer brand that first year. I mean, I was working out of my kitchen and sharing someone's commercial kitchen. I sold like $800,000 worth of brownies. I had no idea what I was doing. I was a nurse. And so that's how it started. And I don't know that I was really, I guess I was intentional with what I was doing, but I wasn't really thinking about freedom and food conglomerates because I had no idea that I was going to end up in stores and kind of be here 8 years later. I wasn't thinking that far ahead, but that's how it got started.
So I want to go to that for a second for people thinking about starting a business and actually succeeding in the business. I know my kids and their generation, they're teenagers. They're always talking about money. And I say, to exactly your point, please first find the thing that you love, the thing that you're passionate about, right? You're giving nutrition advice to your clients. They're telling you the issues. It's something that you're emotional about. It's something that's important to you. That's a super important point for the listeners. First, find what you love and stick to that. Bootstrap that, right? You used your personal finances, right? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was still working as a nurse. I was still, seeing clients and for nutrition. It was mostly sports nutrition at first. I really kind of just would use my own money to buy. I think the largest amount that I bought at first was like a barrel of mix, which, it's changed since then. And I think it was like $1,600. And I was like, okay, I kind of like just would use my own money from my work, which I know a lot of people transition, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of times want to wait for the perfect moment. They want to jump off the ledge and have saved enough. I honestly, and I don't know that I don't really have regrets, but maybe I should have looked a little more deep into like how much do I need for the whole year, but you don't know whether people are going to respond well to it or not. One of the most important things was kind of following like what you were just talking about, following what you see is a need for other people and for yourself. You start to create it with your own money. You don't necessarily have to come up with this huge business plan and raise all this money. I find that a lot of brands that do that a lot of times fail, or they just get lost,
Right.
Most of the bigger brands or smaller brands that become big, I think are kind of like this, and they got absorbed by a larger company. They weren't kind of made by a Procter & Gamble. They weren't created at Procter & Gamble. I think, this type of story is kind of the way it starts. It's a solution to your own or someone else's problem, and it resonates if it's your own problem with other people, and you just kind of start to see, wow, and you get validation. This is good. I'm being impactful beyond just this one person in front of me, producing something for all these people that they want.
Yeah.
So that's kind of.
And I think that it's first of all, it's the courage. I like that right? I always tell people kind of to keep your job, right? You were still working as a nurse, still as a nutritionist while you're doing this in your kitchen, right? So I think about the nights and the weekends. What are you doing, right? Are you sitting there binging on Netflix, or are you following what you have clarity, right? And you're blood, sweat, and tears, and you're working that way.
It's fun for you. It is your Netflix, I guess.
Right.
Is what it feels like. Yeah.
Right. And then what? Kind of like 8,000, right? 8,000 independent shops, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So think about that, right? I mean, tremendous in less than 10 years. That's really a great accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, sometimes you forget. I'm sure this has happened to you and it happens to a lot of people. You kind of have to stop every so often because you're always looking at your next goal and what you want to kind of accomplish or where you want to be. And you have to stop every year and be like, oh, okay, this is what I was trying to solve 12 months ago, and I already solved it. And I think that's something that I find is difficult for me. Naturally, I have to stop myself and make sure that I realize, wow, okay, I am making progress. Because you get stuck on what the future looks like.
What is just curiosity, what is the favorite of the clientele? What's the favorite item, would you say?
I think it depends. Most of the time, believe it or not, it's peanut butter bliss. It's chocolate peanut butter bliss or chocolate. But I think the reason why peanut butter bliss is so popular is because peanut butter, at least in the United States, I think resonates with a lot of people in fitness. They ate so much peanut butter that chocolate and peanut butter just kind of, worked for them. Because on Amazon, that seems to be the favorite. And on our website, it competes with chocolate. Although recently, I will say that we create like a flavor of the month that is like a surprise. It's something you can't get unless you're subscribed to, and it's a pretty small amount. It's like a VIP thing. That seems to be something that people that are new customers are kind of buying into. which I would have never guessed. And most people, when they look at it, are very surprised because you're kind of signing up for a surprise, And I guess it's something that I'm learning is important to people, like not having monotony.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Common Denominator podcast. My guest this week is Cristie Besu, an entrepreneur, business mogul, and champion of women's sexuality. Next week, just in time for Halloween, I'll be speaking with Sarah Black, the co-host of Salem the podcast and an expert on all things Salem, including the witch trials. A quick reminder that if you like the show, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and follow me on social media at Popack. Now, back to the show. I know that you're not just into specifically eating well, but also a complete holistic, healthy lifestyle. So what does a healthy, holistic lifestyle look like?
I think looking at where they are, where they think they want to be, like what their complaint is, or what, like, is they're coming to you for a reason, or speaking to their friend and complaining about, oh, I would really like to feel more energetic or whatever. We got to kind of take that into consideration first. And then I think maybe finding what one thing you could change that's going to make the biggest difference. Either looking to a professional help you figure that out, or looking amongst the 6,000 different ways to do it. Because there's, like they say, 100 ways or however many ways to skin a cat. I don't believe that there is one way. I think that we're so unique and so different as humans. There's so many different ways to eat and live your life and exercise. What's right for me, not in my personality and my lifestyle and my genetics, may not be. It not just may not be. It won't be right for you, more than likely, unless we're very, very similar.
Right. Like, I know it's very popular to talk about intermittent fasting. So I've been doing that, and I did some tests, and for some reason, exactly to your point, for my kind of genetics, it's not actually the right program for me. So I got to switch off. If I'm going to do intermittent fasting, I got to do it one day 10 a.m., let's say 8 hours, right, to 6, and then the next day I eat at 2, or some variation, switch it up. So I'm learning about. You have to learn, to your point, your specific body type. And also, I also know you're a big advocate of yoga for yourself, right, and breathing.
That was a huge, huge moment for me, because meditation, I didn't realize how important that was to kind of look inwards and slow down. And that was very difficult for me. And since yoga allows you, or kind of encourages you, to meditate and breathe and combine that with movement, I was like, wow. It was the first time I ever really got to experience what other people probably experience when they meditate the first time. So yeah, it's a big part of my life now.
Yeah, and I always wondered why, for me also, I have this Wim Hof, he talks about breathing, and for me, I have this infrared sauna, so I do this 11-minute Wim Hof breathing and infrared sauna. For me, it just really, really grounds me and puts me right in the present. And I always was wondering, what is it about breath, the breathing? And I said, going back to essence, foundation, beginning, birth. Mm-hmm. The first thing, right? So we're in the womb, and then we come out and we take that breath. It's connection right there. That's kind of,
I think you become very connected with yourself. You're very connected with the world. You become very connected with your energy. I think it's, like you said, it's a fundamental, the first thing you do when you, land here.
I had the privilege to listen to your TED Talk, and it really, really resonated. First of all, I want to say thank you for your courage on expressing yourself. I listened to it, but I want you to speak in your own words about going into the TED Talk, and then your journey with the topic.
Yeah. So my TED Talk was basically, they were wanting me to discuss, I guess, how, since my brand, I guess, has, sexuality involved in it, what my story was, why, why I was standing my ground with that, and kind of how that came about. And it made me kind of start to question what and why it was so important to me. And what we were talking about earlier, really started to bubble up. I started to realize um, what I had experienced as a victim of sexual abuse, and speaking up really, really was kind of a huge part of who I am, expressing myself and saying who, how could I explain this? Allowing myself to be, I guess, in charge when or having regular sex, rather than someone choosing for me, made me realize, oh, okay, this isn't, this compartment. I don't have to stay and live in this place where of feeling so what's the word? I don't want to say victimized, but you feel terrible and ashamed. And so sexuality to me then started to feel very natural because it made me feel better when I started to have, sex on my own that wasn't chosen for me. So I guess when I came up with the name Meet Me Guilt Free, I didn't realize that it was going to be a shock to other people, is the truth,
Right.
because it became such a big part of me expressing myself when people started to kind of like not lash out, but, give me a little bit of a slap back in the face. It was hard for me because at first I had to question, am I really doing something wrong? I think I talked about it in that sense. I have two daughters. I have a son that is going to someday, he's in heterosexual relationships with women. Am I doing the wrong thing? And I started to really kind of come to terms with the fact that no, I'm not. I am expressing myself the same way that I think everyone should express themselves, not necessarily sexually, because not everybody feels comfortable. That doesn't resonate for them, right? That was my experience. But they should express themselves in whichever way they, see fit. If they want to play the violin, if they, whatever it is. And I think a lot of times as either victims of sexual abuse, as women, and that's what I talked about a lot in here, I think, it's kind of, we're shamed for expressing ourselves sexually. So that's really, in essence, what it was about. It was about how much more powerful women are and how much more impactful we are when we express ourselves completely. We're not like kind of hiding part of who we are. And I felt that I was expressing myself and I was getting like smacked in the face by everyone on social at first, but not everyone, but a lot of people, and they felt pretty strongly about it.
So for me,
That's what I was saying.
so I'm going to say thank you because
Yeah.
for all the people that had criticism, there's probably thousands and thousands of people that you've empowered. And I'm a big fan of one person empowering the next person because I have many friends and family, unfortunately, that are victims of sexual abuse. And the fact, because it's so core, the fact that you had a strength as a woman, and I'm a big advocate of this, the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that you're thinking about, making that, turning the energy and making that your greatest strength and tremendous successful brand linked to your journey. And that's also probably your deep desire for freedom, right? That freedom. So you're like the poster child in my mind of going from that dark space and then creating light and showing people how to do that. So
Yeah, I think that day I experienced a lot of people in the audience afterwards came up and a lot of people were crying. I didn't realize, I mean, you don't get to, I guess, speak to that many people in person that message resonates with. So, and I also understand how not everyone's in a place to turn, their most darkest hour into something, maybe they're not there yet, or
yes,
maybe it doesn't feel like the right thing. And that's the whole thing. That's, I guess, my point, right? You should feel comfortable if you do feel powerful and comfortable expressing yourself, able to do so. And we should celebrate people when they do and not beat them up.
I found,
And then they don't.
I'll tell you, I found for myself in my own journey, whenever I would judge somebody else, like you were saying, all these critics, I always find when you break it down one person to one person, it's their own journey. It has never anything to do with you. It's that they're not settled in who they are, so they find it necessary to criticize. It's a tremendous work. It takes years, but I always say if you don't want to be judged, don't judge anybody else.
Yeah.
And that includes across the boards. Life is complicated. It's short,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's complicated. So thank you. And I know that you're also with your You Glow Girl grant, you're taking the time to give back. Tell us about that program.
So that is a woman's entrepreneur grant. It's kind of born as a result of same concept. I feel really strongly about, finding power in what I'm doing and my own mission. And it made sense during 2020 when we all kind of stayed home, had a little bit more time for introspection. I started to think about how Eat Me Guilt Free could get back. What do we want to choose? Because the truth is, we were doing beach cleanups and a condom pickup spot for the CDC because Miami, we kind of were giving back in all different sorts of avenues, which was great. But I think what really resonated for me and for the brand was to give back. And this is like a holistic grant. It's not just a $10,000 grant. The first prize was awarded in 2021. This is our second year for the grant. It's $10,000, but we also, there's a physical component, this year, I think we're giving a year of class pass. The first year we gave them a Peloton so that there's movement involved. So we're kind of supporting the entrepreneur holistically. It's not just here's $10,000 figured out. I think there's elements this year to like mental health. We have like therapy. We had like Calm, which I think is like a nap. There's a mentorship involved because I was lacking a mentor. In whatever capacity I can help them or just be their soundboard for that year. So that's what our You Glow Girl Women's Entrepreneur Grant. It's our second year.
So I say to my wife, if women with women's intuition, I know your mother, and right, just let's take mothers, if they were able to have an idea and collaborate together, nobody would stand in their way. It's like the female power. It's tremendous, and I really appreciate that you're doing that and supporting female entrepreneurship.
And I think there's a space for it. Like there's a little bit more empathy, I guess, in the way of being a little more feminine. I find that it's interesting to see what's going to happen. It's a lot of males are also leading their companies with a little bit more empathy. I'm a fan of not being completely, not to get too much into that, like I think people should earn where they are. And everything on the above. I don't really believe in 12th place and all those sort of things, but I do think we do have to, I guess, see the humanity in others and help each other and not judge each other and be as divided as what we are. So I think grants like this and working together is definitely the right direction.
The most recent winner of the grant, what was it that stood out, and who were they?
So they are based in New York, and they call themselves a social app, not a dating app. It's called Foreplay, and it basically launched in New York. It's very successful over there. They're going to test it now in California. You basically get on there. Your profile is you and your friend. I'm on here with my girlfriend, and I can be on here with 3 different women. And then we go on a date. It's a little safer with a male, with 2 friends. And it's not just safer. I think it's less intimidating. It's, it's really interesting. I think it stood out to me because I can see how that would be something that would bring people together, just beyond dating, right? It's a social, it really is a social app. It's not just a dating app. And that's something that I think we need now more than ever after being shut down for a year and a half.
Yeah, community building is extremely important. We are social beings. I ask all guests, if you'd sum up the one thing today that you're grateful for, what would that be?
The word, you always want to say everything, right? But the one thing I'm grateful for I guess, the chance to live this life in its full expression, because, being able to live my life in its full expression has to do with being a mother, has to do with being an entrepreneur, and has to do with being self-aware. That chance, the truth is, what do they say? That there's however many sperms and however many eggs. The truth is, I could have not been born.
Right. I think about that a lot too. I mean, I live in that space. Statistically, we're a statistical anomaly, as they say.
Yeah.
And
Because it's hard for me to choose one thing amongst this life, because I really do believe that there's beauty in even horrible moments, in the ebbs and flows of every piece of our journey. It's hard to see it at the moment, but
yes,
I've become really, I guess, an advocate of really trying to embrace that, believe it or not. As crazy and, kooky as that sounds to some people.
no, it's right because it's truth. It's hard.
Mm.
It's hard. It takes work, but it's truth. It's ebb and flow. And just, I guess, on a little lighter note, what's something that that people don't know about you?
I mean, I think I talked about in my TED Talk, I think I mentioned that I was married like 4 times. So that's something that, I guess shocks people sometimes. They're like, wow, that part of your life, you don't have it together. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think anybody has any part. I don't have any part of my life together, but I think it shocks people. That's been something that I think a lot of times people kind of, I don't necessarily that they judge me, but they are kind of shocked by, I guess.
Yeah, it's marriage is a journey as well. Marriage is a journey as well.
Sure.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. How could people learn more about you, get your products, watch the TED Talk?
So you can find the TED Talk on TED.com. You just look up Cristie Besu, or I don't remember what the actual title is, but Cristie Besu spelled my name. You can actually follow Eat Me Guilt Free. That's the name of our brand, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, or eatmeguiltfree.com. And my personal Instagram, you could find it on there as Cristie Besu, because a lot of people follow both, because it's like the entrepreneur journey of the brand.
Sure.
And that's basically it. That's where you can find me.
Thank you, Cristie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's really been great. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Cristie. Next week, just in time for Halloween, I'll be speaking with Sarah Black, the co-host of Salem the Podcast, and an expert on all things Salem, including the witch trials. Should be a very fun episode. If you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.